welcome back to Phoenix Space. Today we are gonna discuss the work Staying Alive by Vandana Siva, which is prescribed for the PG English students of 4th semester in the paper Literature and Ecology. So let's get started. Vandana Siva is considered as one of the notable environmental activists and radical scientists in the world. She has spent her life in advocating the diversity and indigenous knowledge. She wrote many books about the agriculture and food related things. Then the work Staying Alive was published in the year 1998. Then Vandana Shiva was involved in the many campaigns against the development in the agriculture through genetic modification. She also got Right Livelihood Award in 1993, which is also known as the Alternative Nobel Prize. Then coming to the text, Staying Alive is one of the fundamental books of the ecofeminism. She defines that how ecological crisis, patriarchy, colonialism and oppression of women have a strong link together. Then the book talks about the feministic perspective in the human interaction with nature. She looks at the history of the development and talks about how it's not neutral and biased towards men. She also called this development as maldevelopment, which did not respect diversity, interconnection and interdependent nature of environment. Instead, it laid the foundation for the exploitation, injustice and inequality. This book is very important to understand how women played a significant role in the past and also provide the history of the long struggle of women for the environment. At the starting of the book, she questions the basic concepts of development. She neglected modern science and economics based development. She argued that this development is not developing the society. It has reduced to the continuous process of the colonialization, which is purely based on the exploitation and excretion of women. Seeing nature, the history of development entails the destruction of nature, women and culture, for which third world women, tribal and peasants are still fighting. She further argued that how modern science and economics assumption of Western patriarchy as main aim of only profit, for which they destroyed the whole ecology and created disbalance in nature. That's all about the first chapter. Then move to the second chapter. She finds that neutrality of the modern science is a myth. She claimed that this development is a project of the patriarchy, patriarch men to displace women and nature from the development, from the production work. She described that how modern science and economics progress is violent in nature and it is the political need of the capitalist, whereas feminine principle is very non-violent in nature, which allows connections and diversity. Then modern science is used by men only to slay women and nature. Other than this, modern science denies the traditional knowledge and values, the women and traditional communities. Then she talked about the reductionist nature of modern science and economics, which are also violent to the women and nature. Then in the third chapter, she tries to portray that women have a major role in the human survival. She provided evidence to prove that survival of the mankind is much more about the human gathering than man as the hand of. She marked man as a hunter here. Then further she talked about both philosophical and practices of the women, help in production and renewability of the life. She also talked about how man made the tools for destruction and also provided the evidence that in the present time also about 80% researchers are working in the defense research, which is also a portrayal of the science used mainly for the destruction, not for the survival of the humankind. Contrast to this, women of sustenance economics was producing and reproducing things for the daily use without the exploitation of nature. They have been expert of the holistic and ecological knowledge of nature. She also mentioned that people have conserved and sustained the nature with their traditional knowledge and system, but the traditional knowledge and system is destroyed in a few decades by the patriarchal thoughts. They destroy the traditional intimate relationship between human life and nature. They declared nature and women workers of the relationship between human life. They declared that nature and women workers' production and reproduction life as unproductive. The feminine principle is a response to all the deprivation and domination on the women. Then, in the fourth chapter, she talks about the forest and living methods of women and tribal. She talked about the women expertise in the forestry by brothers forestry, but brothers came with the Act of 1878 and denied their entry. They came with the society scientific forestry, which was again based on the profit maximization. They removed women and tribal from the forest, which was their means of survival. In response to that, there were many ecological movements which were led by women. She further described paradigms of women. One is a life enhancing paradigm that emerged from the female principle and talked about sustainability, and other is life destroying, which only care about profit maximization. In the fifth chapter, it was discussed how women have a very important role in food gathering. They consider forest as their mother because forest feeds them, provide fodder for livestock, wood for burning, and many herbs for medicinal use. Whereas patriarchal development sees forest as independent from the human life. They see forest as only the means of extracting valuable natural resources. She also talked about how male history writing excluded women's economic and scientific contributions. Finally, in the chapter 6, she talked about the water crisis, which is threatening the survival of animal, plant, as well as human life. These conditions arose due to the reductionist nature of science, by which we choose the high yield crops which require more water rather than our local crops which were suitable for our environment. Then the concluding chapter talks about the rationale behind the modern science and development view that is responsible for the current economic and ecological crisis, whereas feminine principle has a solution for the crisis, and it will be non-violent, non-gendered, and human inclusive alternatives. Also talked about the third world women have conserved the traditional sustainable method by different ecological movements. Then that's all about the chapters. Then this book provides a very different context of the development. The book tries to look for the gender issues in the ecological context. She tries to provide the intimate connection of the women and the forest. It's very good for them to understand women's role and women's struggle in the environmental issues. She tries to portray development as exclusion project which deprived women and tribal. She provided the evidence that traditional knowledge and women expertise did not get value as it should be because the history writers were males and Western. And you can find the phenomena all over the world. History was biased towards elite and men. She rightly portrays this in her book. Other than this, her book talks about the serious ecological problems which are going to face in the future. The book is able to show the danger of our high consumption and profit driven society. She tried to create a space to the voices of the third world country in radical way. She talks about the respect, the tradition and practices of the indigenous community. She put this point evidently and that we should not directly deny the traditional practices without proper research and should not impose a model for all the world. Her views on the diversity was to the point, although it provides an alternative way to see the history through ecological and feministic perspective. That's all about Staying Alive by Vandana Shiva. And this is a very brief, short summary of the work. So, what I wanted to tell you is read the original text to get more information, and this video will only help you to get a rough idea of the work. So, you have to read the original text. Please make sure that. Then, see you with another video. Till then, bye.